This is just kind of an overview, like Paulo said. I mean, I'll just run it, and we'll kind of see what happens. Kind of says what we are. I think most of you people know that we're already here, and we build test equipment, and we have lots of capabilities for trucks and off-highway vehicles, and we've been doing it for a while. Not news. Some of you may not know quite all the history. Quite a few heavy truck and off-road systems in the field. Well, we hadn't really sat down and counted them all up until recently, and I was actually a little surprised. So, yes, we're in this business. There's no question about it. We're here to see if we can help you. And we've got some examples, heavy truck and off-highway stuff. Looks like we should have operation now. Gee, that looks familiar. Did we see that somewhere before? Nice place they've got here. They've been growing their test lab pretty well. They seem to be making good use of it. Not the only place around. This is Volvo Trucks in Gothenburg, Sweden. Will you quit that? There we go. And this is a 2-axle test stands that can be configured independently, such as we see on the left, or to test a bogie, such as you see in the movie up there, where we're testing 2 axles that are connected together as a truck bogie. Customer is running this basically every day for several years now. What's kind of interesting is something that I didn't think about ahead of time, is that underneath the vertical inputs, there's a pile of hardened steel slivers from the leaf springs wearing out. That hardened steel comes off in slivers, and the whole area around the test rig is covered with those. It's very, very dangerous. It's something that I guess we really hadn't experienced particularly before, so we may have to do something about that. We're talking to them. Always challenges. Anyway, the Wheel Force transducer product line, the Swift, is back online. It's back available. We've got a PCB person here. If you've got some specific questions I can talk to you about. When I talk, my presentation, is that this afternoon? Yeah, this afternoon, tomorrow. When we talk about the heavy vehicles and testing those in the laboratory, I do talk a little bit about our experience with instrumentation and using wheel force transducers on some of these types of vehicles. This is another example of what we call heavy truck test. It's for trailers, of course. These are for over-the-road, fully payloaded trailers up to something on the order of 40 tons or so. We've installed quite a few of these worldwide, in fact, and I've got pictures and movies of 2 of them here to show you today. This is Welton in Poland, and you see the system, how the elevator works, how the stuff comes up. This allows you to drive the truck over the system, drop off the trailer, and leave, and then the system rises up and engages the trailer where the truck was. Very user-friendly. It also provides horizontal restraint for the vehicle by having the vertical actuator with airbags around it to hold on to the kingpin. So it's allowed some freedom of motion without hard restraint. It gets a very realistic set of loads and motions on the trailer. This one is Schmidt's Cargo Bull in Germany. It's a very, very similar system to the one that we just saw at Wilton. This is an interesting spring test in Turkey. 2 leaf springs are being tested there. I think it's a 5-degree of freedom test. So they're testing the 2 springs as though they're connected to an axle, and they got bounce and tramp and roll and all that stuff on there. Engine torque, the whole works is there to exercise the springs in a very realistic fatigue environment. This is another Mercedes-Benz one. This is another dedicated leaf spring test, and yet it's a different test stand altogether compared to the one that we saw before. People have a lot of different ways to go about testing these leaf springs, depending on what they're trying to accomplish, whether they're trying to measure properties or just do fatigue testing or do simulation or whatever. Many different possibilities exist for testing leaf springs. This is in Sampa in Turkey, a component test lab. It's a very extensive laboratory. We'll kind of do a walkthrough tour here in the movie. Lots of test plates, Lots of portal frames. I don't actually know how many channels they have running in that lab. It's quite a few, though. Ooh, squiggly lines. We all look at a lot of squiggly lines in our careers these days, don't we? Okay. And here we back to Streparava, showing some of their component tests rather than their full system tests. Lots of different actuators for doing various types of tests. You see truck steering gear tests, suspension component tests, etc. And we saw this movie earlier today, tractor ride comfort and operator fatigue studies. Pretty typical application now. There's quite a few of these systems out and operating, trying to accomplish the same basic thing. Since the government put standards on ride of construction, cultural equipment, of course, it's really expanded the requirement for testing and development work. Here we've got one in Klaas in Germany, and this one they're doing a lot of durability work on it too. Here you see they've got a front end loader and something on the back with a full payload on it, and they're bouncing and shaking and moving, and they've got instrumentation there to find out how much damage they might be getting on the frame, on the connecting arms, and all that kind of stuff. Thought that was actually a well done video piece right there. I like it when people do that kind of. Okay, and we heard from Daniel from Kuhn earlier today, and we just have a picture of his rig running here for a second. It's a pretty violent environment. When you watch these tractors when they're transporting, especially when they're traveling on the field, this stuff is really has a violent existence. Interesting, very interesting applications. Speaking of violent existence, big shake tables. We have a lot of big shake tables out there at large equipment manufacturers. This stuff is basically shaking itself to death all the time. So one of our bigger construction firms has purchased a series of big tables, and they've put every chassis structure on these to develop the things like the railings, the doors, the windows, the seats, and all of the stuff that goes in it that you really can't analyze very well. You don't know the load path from the ground, you don't know the damping, you don't know how violent the thing will get. So having a vibration table like this to play back real-time data into the entire structure as it's assembled has proven extremely useful in bypassing problems in the field. This is just an example of a various component tests. This is one people don't think about a lot, but if you think about tractor wheels, they get a lot of overturning moment and a very high operating load, lots of torque. And so testing those wheels is not a very easy thing to do. This is one that tests the center. So we've got a stick you see in the upper corner coming out, and this is the other end of it. And so by running these two actuators 90 degrees out of phase from each other, we can put a rotating bending moment on that wheel, and we can simulate full life of that wheel a few hours in the laboratory. The failure mode and such like is very similar to what happens in the field, so they've been able to use this quite extensively for wheel development. Of course, we sell a lot of components. There's a test lab in Sweden, Komatsu, where there's a link, and you can go there and see lots of good stuff that they're doing at Komatsu. They have an interesting lab, big equipment. Big equipment is always fun. And here's some, we're going to put the seminar presentations. There's an address here that'll be in your handout so that you can download those. The stuff that's on like this presentation, you're free to use as long as you give credit to whoever has it, whatever company is there. They've given us permission to publicly distribute those slides and movies, which is kind of why I showed them today. So that completes my prepared presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy your lunch.